Coming in at number 4 on my all-time favorite movies list, we have what may be considered by many as one of the greatest movies ever made, and quite frankly, you can't really blame him for it. Number 4 on my list is the 1942 romantic film Casablanca. This was a film that was dealt with a lot of production problems, scripting problems, the fear of casting such an actor like Humphrey Bogart as a leading romantic actor, and most importantly, this film did not have an ending until the very last minute. This is one of those things that should have been dead on arrival, and yet, it's one of those happy little accidents that comes around every once in a while, and we'll delve more into that as we move along here, but if you don't know the story of Casablanca by now, really, you should know it by now, but if you don't, in World War II Casablanca, Rick Blaine, played by Humphrey Bogart, exiled American and former freedom fighter, runs the most popular night spot in town. The cynical lone wolf Blaine comes into the possession of 2 valuable letters of transit. When Nazi Major Strausser, played by Conrad Veidt, arrives in Casablanca, the sycophantic police captain Renault, played by Claude Rains, does what he can to please him, including detaining a Czechoslovakian underground leader, Victor Laszlo, played by Paul Henreid, and much to Rick's surprise, Laszlo also arrives with Ilsa, played by Ingrid Bergman, Rick's one-time love. Rick is very bitter towards Ilsa, who ran out on him in Paris, but when he learns she has good reason to, they plan to run off together again using the letters of transit. Casablanca, like I said, is one of those happy little accidents that comes around every once in a while where it's just everything goes wrong behind the scenes and just all of a sudden it just comes together in the end. I mean, it's almost a perfect love story when you really think about it. You have these 2 really incredible leads, Bogart and Bergman, who just, they work off each other really well, and like I said, there was a lot of fears that Humphrey Bogart was not the right actor that you want to cast for a romantic leading role around this time period. I mean, they easily would have gone with somebody like a Clark Gable, who had been in Gone with the Wind, but they went with Bogart, and the results speak for themselves. You can tell that these 2 were lovers at one point, and even after all these years of being apart, they still do have feelings for each other, whether they see it or not, and it really creates a very intriguing storyline that they all have to work with throughout the course of the film. I mean, the rest of the cast of the movie also works great off of the material as well. The good guys are respectively set up. The bad guys are respectively set up. Everything just works out as well as it should be. From a cinematic perspective, the cinematography is really incredible on this movie. This was shot in black and white, creating that, very unique film noir style that set the mood for a majority of movies in the 30s and 40s, which, of course, this was released in 1942. So it makes sense that this movie has that kind of cinematography to it, but the visual aspects of this movie are just so amazing to look at. I mean, this is a movie that's is over 80 years old, and it still looks incredible after all these years. It does not look like it has dated all that much, and it still looks impressive even after all these years. And, the music in this, what more do you guys say, man? As time goes by, it's just one of those things where it's become synonymous with Warner Brothers. You hear it in the logo all the time, even in the status that Warner Brothers is in. Every time you hear that in the logo, it's just like, you feel like you're there, man. It's just like, it's so perfectly constructed and presented, that scene in particular. It's one of those great scenes in film history. Like, I love that moment in particular where, Ilsa tells Sam, play it again, and as soon as he plays it, and Rick comes in, it's just like, Sam, I told you never to play that again, and then he realizes that Ilsa's right there, and they just have these memories of the good times they had together. It's just such a phenomenal movie, man. Classic lines. I mean, just some of the greatest lines in movie history. Here's looking at you, kid. I mean, we'll always have Paris, all these great moments, all these great lines. You don't get on that plane, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but, just classic lines, classic things about this entire movie, man. And like with many classic movies, this is one of those ones that you've seen spoofed and parodied so many times. I mean, my favorite ones are The Critic, of course. There's a great one with the 30-second bunnies that they did, which was really well done. And, of course, my introduction to Casablanca came from, of all things, the Looney Tunes. The Looney Tunes did Casablanca in 1995, and it's still a classic short that still lives up after all these years. And they even tried to do a raunchy comedy version of it in 2001 with Out Cold, which is surprisingly really funny. I mean, it's one of those movies that I just recently talked about it on Time About the Movies, as on the time of recording this, but Out Cold is actually a lot better than you would give it credit for. I'm not going to say it's a classic film by any means, but it surprisingly has a lot of really good funny moments to it. And it definitely does a unique job of making the references to Casablanca, but it doesn't do a straight up full on remake of it. And that's what I kind of really appreciated about it. Which is funny because not too long after that movie came out, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, when they were together the first time around, wanted to remake the movie. And basically they were going to do it, and basically everyone said, no, you're fucking not. I mean, they basically were shut down by everybody who was trying to make that happen. And let's just say thank God that never happened, because that's just one of those ones where Casablanca is really one of those ones where it's just like, it's really hard to tell that story from the part that it's from the time that it's in right now. I know there was a TV series they did in the 1980s, which did not last very long, not surprisingly, but it just goes to show you that, like, sometimes it's probably best to just leave the classics on their own. I mean, Madonna has tried to do one recently, and as much as I love Madonna, it's just like, the time has come and the time has come for that, man. Like, there's been other times when people have tried to do something sort of a Casablanca-ish, like one of the more notable ones as of late was Havana, which starred Robert Redford, and I think it was one of Sidney Pollack's movies that he did after Out of Africa, which wasn't a bad movie, but it really wasn't that great either. It was just one of those ones where it's just kind of like, yeah, you're clearly trying to do something similar to Casablanca, and as great as the actors that movie had, Robert Redford, Lena Olin, Alan Arkin, Raul Julia, it just really didn't work when it was all said and done. It's just like Casablanca just shows that it's one of those movies that still holds up well over time, and it's just kind of like, okay, let it go, just let it be the classic that it is. And you know, what more can you say about it, man? Casablanca really is that great love story. It's a great love story with a lot of good comedy, drama, romance, great music, great characters, beautiful cinematography, just one of the most enjoyable movie experiences you could possibly have. It's a movie that still holds up over 80 years later, and it's going to hold up more 80 years down the road. It's a classic film, one of the must-see films of film, and just must-see films in general. If you're getting into films and you need a refreshing start with a movie like Casablanca, or maybe start with my number 3 film as we get to that one later. But Casablanca, man, Casablanca, number 4 on my all-time favorite movies. It's hard not to love this movie, man. So, yeah, there you go. Casablanca's number 4. Check out what I had to say about The Naked Gun from last week, and I'll see you back here next week for number 3, the top 3, as we're coming down to the wire here. We're going to head to my number 1 movie of all time coming up in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that.